In the latest fallout from SpaceX's Starship launch.
Breaking news, that live footage that we showed you of the SpaceX Starship
rocket did fail to reach orbit. It looks like it blew up over Texas.
Just a few days ago, the long-awaited inaugural test flight of SpaceX's next-generation Starship spacecraft exploded minutes after liftoff. The fully stacked Starship, the booster, and the Starship vehicle ended in an explosion during an uncrewed test flight from South Texas, cutting short a key step in Elon Musk's development of a rocket vessel to take us to the Moon and Mars. The two-stage rocket ship, standing taller than the Statue of Liberty at 394 feet, 120 meters, successfully lifted off from the launch tower, while the entire team was hoping that it would, at best, pull off a 90-minute debut flight into space just a little beyond the Earth orbit. But unfortunately, just less than 4 minutes into the flight, the upper stage Starship failed to separate from the lower stage Super Heavy as expected, and the entire spacecraft was seen tumbling end over end before blowing apart. Could you see that? The throng of SpaceX workers cheered wildly as the rocket cleared the launch tower, and again when it blew up. Indeed, what an intriguing ending. The flight test was the very first for Starship aboard the company's new Super Heavy rockets and the first launch ever for that lower stage booster, which SpaceX has boasted as the most powerful launch vehicle on Earth. Rocket launchers are like opening a box of chocolates. Though riskier and more expensive, you never know what you'll get. There's always the possibility of an explosion. When a rocket is set to leap off the launch pad, there's a good chance of seeing a spectacular launch or a spectacular failure. Despite the fact that the two-stage rocket ship made it less than halfway to the edge of space, reaching an altitude of around 24 miles, 39 kilometers, the flight accomplished its primary goal of getting the new vehicle off the ground at liftoff. SpaceX President Gwynne Shotwell likewise made a similar statement in a conference in February that the real goal is not to blow up the launch pad. Though everyone was happy with the successful liftoff, even at that, the mission fell short of reaching several objectives. The plan was for Starship to fly into space at least 90 miles, 150 kilometers, above Earth before re-entering the atmosphere and plunging into the Pacific near Hawaii, an important milestone in SpaceX's ambition of sending astronauts back to the Moon and ultimately to Mars. Besides, the stainless steel Starship and its Super Heavy rocket are intended to be reusable, but don't forget the company has a contract with NASA to use it for the Artemis program, which seeks to send humans back to the Moon by 2025. At first, SpaceX could not immediately identify the cause of the incident, but Musk, as shown seated in the Starbase Mission Control Room in Boca Chica, Texas, wearing a headset, sent out a tweet congratulating the entire SpaceX team and stating that the company had already learned a lot for the next test launch, which will take place in a few months. The spacecraft reached a peak altitude of 24 miles, 39 kilometers, before its fiery disintegration, SpaceX said. The company also noted that the rocket reached the critical launch point of maximum aerodynamic pressure before appearing to lose control. SpaceX principal integration engineer John Insprucker, one of the webcast commentators, said the experience would provide a wealth of data to inform further flight tests. In the days since, much virtual ink has been spilled, both applauding the launch and condemning its failure. NASA chief Bill Nelson congratulated SpaceX on Twitter, saying every great achievement throughout history has demanded some level of calculated risk, because with great risk comes great reward. However, whether the Starship explosion was a successful failure, as some have labeled it, or a failure in general, the causes of the incident must be identified. The question must be answered soon if SpaceX intends to fly another Starship anywhere close to the few months SpaceX founder and CEO Elon Musk stated in his tweet. Shortly afterward, Musk, SpaceX's chief engineer, came up with a few explanations to what happened, stating that the spacecraft experienced multiple engines out during its ascent, then lost altitude and began to tumble, before the flight termination system was commanded on both the booster and the ship. He added further that the spacecraft's flight termination system, FTS, a self-destruct mechanism to prevent danger to people or structures on the ground, destroyed both stages of the rocket. The company did not reveal whether the FTS was triggered automatically by the out-of-control tumbling, or whether it was manually activated from the ground. Starship is not the only ship armed with an FTS. Indeed, the Federal Aviation Administration mandates the technology in all rockets before they can fly. Also, out of the 33 engines that power the rocket's first stage, the flight video reveals that at least 8 failed to fire. That means only 25 engines functioned during the launch. People had taken to their Twitter accounts to pour out their fury about the explosion, its damage, and notably, NASA's chief tweet. See a few of them. "This wasn't calculated risk, this was rushed. This was careless, and people are suffering when those particulates fall on them, their homes, and their water supplies." Another said, "They knew it would explode." Another said, "The rocket exploded and littered the ocean with millions of gallons of fuel and pounds of debris. Are we destroying our environment so we can mine precious metals from space? At the very least, it doesn't seem like something to celebrate." The person may be right. Don't forget that the rocket weighs about 1.2 million pounds. That's huge. A VR cam caught some spectacular footage of the scene as well as that fateful morning, and we are stunned at the amount of debris that was ejected. Just take a look at this. Musk's tweet had barely gone public when the Federal Aviation Administration (FAA) declared that the whole Starship series will be temporarily suspended. An anomaly occurred during the ascent and prior to stage separation, resulting in the loss of the vehicle, according to the statement. Resumption of flight of the Starship/Super Heavy vehicle is based on the FAA certifying that any system, process, or procedure related to the mishap does not endanger public safety. Clearing that FAA hurdle will require SpaceX to take a deep dive into the telemetry that streamed down from the Starship during its brief flight and examine the magnitude of the damage done. The loss of the rocket itself was not the only harm done that day. The launch pad suffered serious damage as bowling ball-sized chunks of concrete broke loose and flung about from the force of the engines that did ignite. As the New York Times, Texas Public Radio, and others reported, in Port Isabel, Texas, a city 6 miles from SpaceX's Boca Chica launch site, buildings shook, at least one window shattered, and a cloud of sandy debris rained down on the residents and their homes. The pad and surrounding area were cordoned off well in advance of the test, SpaceX said. Any debris from the explosion should have landed over the water in areas placed off limits by the US Coast Guard, he added. It's a pity the entire SpaceX team is going through this challenge. For now, SpaceX is keeping its head down, attempting to fix its difficulties, make repairs, and fulfill the FAA's requirements, which has the last say on future Starship flights. Many people feel that the company has the resources to accomplish it and that Starship has a promising future. This was a test flight, says astrophysicist Pascal Ehrenfreund, a professor at the George Washington University Space Policy Institute. During the development of a disruptive launcher, setbacks are anticipated. There will certainly be a next test flight, and hopefully Starship becomes a commercial reality. The road to the test flight's explosion, which occurred on Thursday, April 20th, has not been without previous tests and setbacks. That was actually SpaceX's second attempt to launch the massive stacked Starship. The scheduled test flight was cancelled because engineers discovered a frozen valve on the vessel. In February, a stationary test firing of the Super Heavy while strapped to a platform ignited only 31 Raptor engines out of the 33. And an earlier static firing test in July 2022 ended with the vehicle's engine section exploding. Before that, SpaceX had test-launched prototypes of Starship's upper stage in 5 short flights to an altitude of 6 miles, 9.7 kilometers, seeking to perfect its return landing capability. All but one crashed in flames. Could it be true that they knew it would explode with so many track records of failed prototype tests? Years of explosive tests, increasing hype, and a multitude of hurdles culminated in that failed inaugural test launch, with billions of dollars wasted. However, to be candid, launching the equivalent of a 40-story building and successfully getting it past Max Q, otherwise known as maximum dynamic pressure, on the first launch is a staggering achievement. We should be deeply proud of the work of SpaceX here. Those men and women working day and night under Elon Musk's ambitious pressure at SpaceX are legends. This team deserves applause for this from everyone. Please show them your love, everyone in the comment section.